Hi, Tom Fishburne. Welcome to CMO-ology. Good to have you on.
Thank you so much. Great to be on.
A little about Tom. So Tom is a marketer turned cartoonist, working with FMCG brands and big tech companies, and now founder of Marketoonist, which is a content marketing agency working with big brands. Can you tell us a little bit about Marketoonist?
Yeah, of course. So I come from a marketing background. I've always been a cartoonist since I was a kid, and I realized that cartoons are such a great medium to tell stories. So 10 years ago, I started a full-time kind of small business that helps businesses tell stories using the medium of cartoons with a sense of humor, mostly for B2B brands, but some B2C brands as well. And then increasingly also for internal sort of culture change types of projects. But the idea that humor is such a great vehicle for communication, particularly in business.
That's really what we want to talk about today, is particularly in light of kind of the situation that we're in now. When and how is humor appropriate? You know, is it something that consumers want? How should brands really tackle humor? So we call this episode, Why So Serious? How does humor really fit into B2B marketing?
There's sort of three things I think of that humor can do at a general level in business, and definitely relates to B2B marketing. First is this sense of belonging, that there's this connection and community that you feel with an audience when you're sharing a laugh. It's something that's a communal sort of thing. The second thing, it's a little bit disarming. So if you're talking about a very technical subject or a dry subject or a hard subject, humor can make the medicine go down a little bit. So it lets you talk about things that are hard to talk about another way. And then the third way is a little bit of a sense of being vulnerable. You're being human when you're putting yourself out there to laugh together at something. And so I feel like there's something very humanizing about humor that is beneficial in any form of communication, but particularly B2B marketing, that can very often get so features and benefits driven that you lose the human part. You talk about the latest bells and whistles and not what it's like for the end person who's part of that experience.
I absolutely love that framework. So vulnerability and humanization, community building, and then making light of a difficult situation. Now, all these things that you've just said are actually quite relevant. So yes. How does humor fit into the context of, the current situation?
I think that there are a lot of difficult things going on, and humor can be a way to connect. It's how people are actually connecting with each other. I mean, there's been a huge rise in memes and jokes and things that people are sharing with each other just as a way to make sense of the situation that we're currently in. I found myself recently reading cartoons from other generations, and particularly lately, Bill Maudlin, who was Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist during World War II. And he created these amazing cartoons on the front lines of what life is literally like in the trenches. And they're beautiful and they're human and they're funny. And I think the key there, and he was beloved for all the soldiers on the front lines because he was able to find humor even in dark situations. And it was important, it was needed ultimately to have something like that. But what I find is ultimately it was an act of empathy. It was about, the cartoonist being in the trenches with them, the creator of the content being in the trenches with the consumers of the content. And so I think if you strike the right tone with humor, it shows that we really are in the trenches together. And that I think is a real important gift that anyone working in business can think about.
I think when humor is born out of empathy, out of understanding someone's situation, it's perfect in a type of situation like this. Have you seen any brands that have done this type of observational, empathic humor well?
Probably recently was Burger King. They've kind of have this new campaign about being a couch patriot. The idea that you're a patriot by staying at home on the couch. And absolutely. I like how it approaches that, because we are all sheltering in place. And why not make fun of the fact that we're being couch potatoes, and that makes you into something of a patriot? So I think that's humor, and it's very applicable to the Burger King brand. That's the other big point about all this, is that not all brands should sound alike. Brands have different DNAs. I was trying to find this example. My wife showed me a piece of direct mail, and I thought it was really a wonderful use of humor. I'm not sure which brand did it, but it was a clothing brand, and it is a very subtle joke. They had all the models in the catalog dressed only from the top up, and underneath they're wearing their boxer shorts, because in Zoom meetings, nobody can see what you're wearing below the screen. And I thought that was such a wonderful sense of humor, because we're suddenly on all these virtual calls. That's a shared insight, going back to a connection of empathy. And so there is humor in that, and it's appropriate for that brand. And I feel like that there's an opportunity for any brand to find what are these observational things that relate to your brand that you can do consistent with your own brand voice, that shows that you have a connection with the audience you're trying to reach.
What would you say to, CMOs and brand marketers that are thinking about how to react in a situation like this?
Every business out there, if you listen to your customers, they are sharing things. They might be about everyone suddenly working from home and trying to do a serious conference call when your toddler's running around in the background, or, there are a lot of shared insights, some at a generalizable level that everybody would understand, and then some of them to a very specific niche level related to your own brand. So I think starting from listening, and then the second thing would be starting small, finding a way to connect on those small moments, and then building onto that.
100%. I was looking at a poll that Unruly did, and actually 30% of audiences are looking for content to, forget about their challenges that they're going through, and they want brands to come up with positive, uplifting, entertaining, funny content. How can you build a culture of humor within your organization?
I just came across the most bizarre new business idea that relates to this. There's a farm somewhere in the US, and obviously a lot of farmers are going through tough times, and this entrepreneurial farmer decided that they were going to create a business that for $50, you can invite one of his farm animals to your next Zoom call as a participant. So if you're hosting 50 people, suddenly you have a donkey as literally one of the participants. It's just such a random, whimsical little thing. And that, if you're trying to build team camaraderie, that could bring a smile to people in a needed time, a little bit of humanness. That's just one crazy example that I stumbled upon, but I feel like whatever's appropriate for your organization to show that there's a human shared connection amongst all of you, I think is needed more than ever. And once you start doing it internally as a culture, it can start extending externally in how you can show empathy to your own customers.
Absolutely. I think building that internally first, right, as a starting point to get people to, think about that's the culture of the brand, then how does that externalize? How do you inject humor into these programs, and what effects does it have in changing behavior within an organization?
One of my more recent campaigns is working with a DBS bank in Singapore. It's kind of one of the largest banks in Asia, and that was a great project to see across this very large hierarchical organization, some of the unique aspects that were happening in the culture, finding a way to find humor at that with that. And it was sponsored by senior leaders in the whole company. So as they're trying to be more entrepreneurial and make changes, they're showing at the very top level, we're able to laugh at ourselves, and therefore we can talk about things openly that some organizational cultures might be resistant to even expose. And those things that nobody wants to talk about are often the ways to get in the way of a company being successful.
Thank you so much, Tom, for joining CMO-ology.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking with you. I hope so too.